So we're recording this for Men of Tomorrow. Men of Tomorrow is an attempt for us to understand what it requires to be a man, what it requires to be a dad, a father. It's tough. It's tough. The world's changing.
It's not easy.
Nobody gives us a handbook. I'm here with my son, and I'm here with a father as well.
Father of three.
You're father of three.
I am.
Congratulations.
Yep,
well
thank
done. So what we want to do is Men of Tomorrow is really around giving the skills, the tools, and the resources so that we can flourish in our life, we can thrive in our life, and face the inevitable challenges that we are all going to face that nobody told us about. So I'm here with Paulo. Paulo, could you introduce yourself? Who are you? Kids, father, tell us about you.
Oh goodness. So Paulo is name. I'm a father of three, one neurotypical daughter and two boys on the autism spectrum with various degrees of mental health issues. And you talk about what does it mean to be a father. Geez, I wish I had a handbook because it's been a journey, a very interesting journey, and it's taught me patience. So I have been involved with giving back to the community in my latest chapter of my life. I did play sports, but in the last 10 years I did end up giving back to helping kids with disabilities play soccer. And again, that's something for me, and also providing kids with lesser opportunity than my children to actually play a chance to play sport. And I'm still doing charity stuff today. Yeah.
I've just got a quick question. You were just talking about that latest chapter.
Yes.
Spending time with kids, teaching them soccer. I'm a huge soccer fan. You are too. What do you think that brings to them, that sort of passion for the sport that me and you, we love?
Yeah, and that's what I ended up doing. After 20 years of playing, then coaching semi-professionally, it got to a point where I was a little bit fatigued. And my two boys, actually my oldest boy who does volunteering here at Assistance Dogs Australia, we were struggling to find an avenue for him to feel inclusive.
Yeah.
And tried for several years in the normal teams. But as a coach, I could see he was lagging behind, and while all the other kids who were able-bodied, neurotypical, didn't have any motor skills issues, which he did, trying to find an avenue where he can enjoy something active, but non-competitive. And I think that's the key thing. So if you've ever been associated with sports, it's quite a conundrum, right? Because it's a sport, yes, you want to win, but I think it goes too far sometimes. And my boys aren't very competitive. They want it to be involved with sport for the simple enjoyment.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the parents that are on the sidelines that berate the coach, berate the ref, berate the other members of the team? And I know you've never seen this in soccer, but just imagine, what would you say to them as a father, as a man, as a role model right now? Because sometimes we see a lot of aggressive parents.
Yep. It's not the World Cup. Your kids aren't being paid professionally. And having been on both sides, if you keep on doing what you're doing, they will be turned off the game. It's that simple. And I've had the privilege to play alongside internationals and against internationals. And it's the ones that aren't pushed, don't have that aggression, or the aggressive parents or the really fanatical parents that will succeed. Because the children who have got the passion that is innate are the ones that are going to find that internal motivation to drive. Not a overbearing father or aggressive parent. It's not the World Cup and they're not getting paid. When they're a professional sports person, then they can do all they like.
You said something really quite powerful, which is internal motivation.
Yes.
In a lot of teams, as leaders, a lot of parents have said, we need to motivate our teams, we need to motivate our kids. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's not about us giving them motivation, it's about, and you said internal motivation, I call it inspiration. We have to inspire them to love the game.
Sometimes, yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, look, sometimes you have to inspire, but then at the same time, sometimes it's just not even there. So I guess you've got to find your groove, to put it in a casual and that's difficult as a coach, as a father. What is your groove? And I think for me, the outlet, switching over from normal teams, I hate using that term, but normal teams and then to a club that was just fully for kids with disabilities, was the groove that was appropriate for my son, which was not competitive, which was about inclusivity and about just enjoyment and just playing, going out there once a week, going out there and playing. That was his groove. And I think that's the thing. If you can, as a coach or parent, you can expose your kids, either in the team and or as a parent, expose them to the opportunities to find that inspiration. You're not going to force it. At the end of the day, I can't force a child to love soccer. It just doesn't work. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Just got a quick question. You were talking earlier before we started recording about your job in learning and development.
Yes.
How has that influenced you as a father? And what do you think has been maybe a shift from maybe some of your friends who have been fathers in their way of parenting?
I hate talking about my parenting style because it's almost like as if we've got this secret. It's a partnership, first of all, with whoever partner you have. It's got to be a collaborative partner. You go through some really horrible times, and if you don't have that support mechanism, and if you're not patient with each other and understanding, it's not going to work regardless. So I think, ironically, my wife and I actually met as teachers, so we're trained high school teachers. Wow. I fell into learning and development for the last 30 years. And I think what it's taught me is more understanding of neuroscience and the brain and how people learn. And in particular with my two boys, with their neural issues, both of them are different. Entirely different, and I think that's the thing for me. It's taught patience, understanding, and different ways. If you have a neurotypical person, you may be able to go do your homework for an hour, but for both my boys, it's not like that. You've got to have brain breaks. It's 5 minutes with ADHD and ADD and Asperger's and all this concoction of all these issues that are impacting neural pathways. It's not as simple as just go to this assignment. You've got to have structure. So you, as a parent, you push yourself in learning the different mechanisms out there to help support and put some structure. For both my boys who've got autism, it's not the same approach.
And what advice would you give to parents that are going on this journey to educate themselves and who may not know where the best way to go is?
We have this amazing thing that people are now exposed to, which is called the internet. My goodness, really. There's so much information out there. There are some experts with autism. I would seek them out. What we did, we went to conferences, we went to talks. I won't plug any, but there are books out there, and that's really important process in this journey. Patience, and also taking off the shackles of shame. Just get over it, put it to the side, and deal with what you've got to help, what you've got in front of you to really improve that person's life, because that's the goal. And once you have that goal, and understand what you need to teach yourself and find out information. And then the last point is network with parents who have got similar children, because quite often this is a lonely journey and it plays on your own mental health as a father. And if you don't have that connection, I would like to say all parents or all fathers are the same, but they're not. Some people shy away, some people hide in a corner, some people aren't as engaged. I've made it a mission in my life, and it was something Stephen Covey said many years ago. Even if I don't like whatever my children are doing, I'm going to try and expand myself to get interested and do everything that they're interested in to at least try and make their life a little bit easier. Not everyone's like that, but if parents that are going through the same journey, I think that networking component will get you through it because you don't feel so alone. And that's really important.
You alluded to you and your wife as both being teachers.
Yes.
It's hard enough to be in a relationship.
Yep.
And your kids are is that the right word to use?
Yeah, neurotypical if they don't have any sort of, yes.
Yeah.
That's,
And is it even called neurodivergent? Is it?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not fussed with schools.
So I can't even start to imagine what pressure that puts on a relationship.
I laugh, it's a nervous laugh.
So we will be interviewing your wife after this. So we talk to a lot of young boys and a lot of young men who are starting in their relationships. And once again, there's no handbook. And to deal with the challenges of the inflation and the cost of living pressures, job security, job insecurity, health issues. And on top of that, which is just normal, and you have two children who are neurodivergent. Can you share a little bit about what it's been like for you, what it's been like for the relationship over this period?
If you enter in a partnership or a collaboration, if it's another person or a business, you cannot go into that expecting that things are going to run smoothly and everything's going to be perfect. That's just unrealistic. And I fear for the younger generation that with all the social media exposure that they've got out there, with people posting, look where I am, it's not always like that. So you've got to be, I think, firstly, mentally prepared that, hey, look, it's not going to be a smooth road. Once you accept that, and I think that then tags onto a bit of selflessness, which I think sometimes I probably go on the selfish side of doing things for myself a lot, but you literally have to give up what you're used to as a single person, as a married couple without kids. It's totally different. So it's less about you now, and it's more about moving forward with the family. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice I could give, and that's a change that I experience. It's the things that you're used to doing, you probably have to relax a little bit and go, you know what, I probably used to go drink out with my mates every so often, or I've been blessed, I was allowed to play soccer for 20 years. That takes a lot of time, a very patient partner. And look, there was times where I did cross those boundaries, and in terms of playing sport, too much. And I think as I get older, I'm starting to realize, oh, it's actually less about me, it's actually more about the unit. And I think that's the thing that it's probably, for me as a male father, hardest thing to not be so selfish and go, oh, hold on a minute, how does this impact others? And if you have that top of mind, I think then always you can at least be conscious of whatever actions you do, whatever things that you do, you at least are thinking about it. Doesn't necessarily mean you always follow through, and sometimes you try to ignore it. But I think that's the biggest piece of advice, and I think for anyone starting out. So yeah, think about the others, think about the unit. So it's not just about you.
I was going to see if we could talk a little bit about your journey with
Yeah.
resistance dogs, how you found out about it. And I think your son is here today actually helping out and volunteering.
Volunteer.
So I'd just like to understand, how did you find out about it? How did you experience it? What was your experience? What was your son's experience?
Absolutely. So I think for me to explain the journey, I have to put a disclaimer out there that yes, both boys are on the autism spectrum disorder. However, there is a myth that, oh, just because you've got one child, then you can deal with the other. It's going to be easier for you. No, it's not. So with my oldest, who was here today as a volunteer, that was the prelude, because he's high functioning, which we've been blessed. We were able to cope with schooling, and it was generally a good journey, not without bumps. With my youngest, when he was diagnosed, it wasn't the same. So later on, he got diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, also oppositional defiance disorder, motor skills issues, mental health issues, which I probably won't share on screen. To be honest with you, as parents and as a father, it got us to the point of desperation. We didn't know what to do. These were severe psychological issues, very high functioning, right? Again, I'm not going to say that he's not nonverbal, but when there's a stigma attached that because he's not nonverbal, then, oh, everything's okay. And that's really annoying as a parent. You can't compare the disabilities. So I think the difference between the two can never be compared, because you have to treat it individually. So for my youngest, hyper intelligent, was reading at the age of 3, knew the table of elements at that age, but because of that, his brain was overstimulating. And so you can imagine the worries and the consumption of things like death, and that was consistent. And so that is a completely different level of management as a father and as a parent to nonverbal. And I'm not saying it's easier or harder, I'm just saying it's different. So it actually got to the point where we were quite desperate. We didn't, as teachers, we thought ourselves very well educated, thought, hey, look, we did the research, but we were stuck. We were really stuck, and we just didn't know what to do. So we looked at alternative therapies, and one of the things that I did some research on was Assistance Dogs Australia many years ago, an occupational therapy with dogs. And so we tried it, and then it was an amazing connection with the child and the assistance dog. I cannot even explain it. The calmness, the ability to focus on, to this day, I've kept the picture of his very first occupational therapy session where he's crossing the road. So my youngest son doesn't really have spatial awareness, where it doesn't matter how much you try, he will come out of a car and literally just walk onto the road and not really look at if there's cars coming. So crossing the road's always been an issue with us. This day, being able to hold on to the assistance dog, all his focus onto the dog, looking after the dog, as opposed to just not being aware for the care of the dog to cross the road. So he was stopping to cross roads, and that to me was when it clicked. We just went, wow. And my youngest has what they call meltdowns, which is autism spectrum disorder. I'm sure parents are going, yes, my son has meltdowns, and no, they're not being poorly behaved, as sometimes you get looks. And the meltdown is literally, they talk about it as if you can imagine a cup being filled and all the emotions and not being able to express, and then eventually that cup overflows with emotion. And at that stage, that's the meltdown. He was having multiple meltdowns. And it doesn't matter what you try and do. You cannot bring a child back from a meltdown. And the assistance dog did. The strategies used were just mind-blowing. I've never been a dog owner, never was allowed to. Another story. I honestly call it a miracle. Seeing the connection, the calmness, the ability to focus and control on my child in that single session meant that I was sold. I was like, okay, where do we apply? So I actually went through all the training sessions that they have. And realistically, you come into this conversation and this partnership with eyes open, and I think it's important to do because it's a big change. And I think that disclaimer is really important because you're not getting a pet, okay? So if you're coming this thinking you're going to get a pet, no. And I hate to say this, but it is a tool. It's a loved tool, part of our family, but it is technically a tool for autism from our situation that has worked wonders. And for example, and I'll finish up pretty soon, a couple of elements. We've been blessed 3-year waiting period, which I hope that it gets reduced. I really do hope the government helps these guys out because this is an amazing establishment. It was a 3-year waiting list and then the match-up, and everything thankfully worked out, and it's been life-saving. And I'm not saying that in the lightest of ways. It has been a lifesaver for my son. That's all I'll say. She's with us. It's been amazing. When crossing the roads, going to the shops, focuses on the dog, going to do haircuts, for example. He's got, I guess, agoraphobia and also doesn't like crowds, social aspects. The dog's with us when we go shopping. When he has a meltdown, the dog's there. I can't begin to articulate the impact it's had. It's been quite a eye-opener.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's all right.
I've just got a quick question. I would love to know an example. So you're talking about meltdowns. An example with the assistance dog that you had. Let's say a normal scenario, you wouldn't impact that dog would have if it wasn't there.
We felt it when it wasn't there. I think the meltdowns before Hera coming to our life was prolonged, and it was almost in a state of anxiety attack coming through, and you just literally couldn't pull. Now with Hera, the second that he feels that his cup is overflown, i.e. starts the meltdown, Hera instantaneously, and this has happened, we've got a 2-story house, she's heard him upstairs have a meltdown and she's there like that without even us commanding. And usually she visits him, so a visit is when she places her head on his lap, and then that allows him to focus on something good as opposed to what's floating in his mind. And so therefore his attention goes to Hera, and it reduces the longevity of the meltdown, focuses on something positive, and brings him back. So then we can manage it. That is the most common example I can explain.
And I've got a question just circling back. We were just talking about sort of soccer, sport, and also mental health as a father. From what you're talking about, there seems to be a lot on your plate. The onus is on you as well to look after your family as well as your partner. What strategies have you put into place for your own mental health that may not be sport?
I don't play sport anymore, and I think I've pulled away from that.
Yeah.
I think the mental strategies, this is going to sound corny, but I've now actually still in give back to the community, right? I'm associated with this Lucasfilm Star Wars 501st group, and we do events, and that's how I release or how I have fun. And even tomorrow I'm visiting Children's Hospital for terminally ill kids. But yes, I get dressed up in Star Wars costumes, but we're giving the opportunity, and that's the thing for me. It's like, it's a grounder for me, that I don't complain about my situation, that I don't want to feel sorry for. I want to give back. We've got terminally ill kids in those hospitals that don't get a chance to get out. We're coming to them. I'm going to walk away going, that's my mental health release. Yep, I've put a smile on someone's face. That's how I do it.
Wow. First of all, thank you. There's one thing that's really coming through from you, Paul, and that is your need to serve. And like you're talking about as a dad, you serving your kids, as a partner, serving your partner, serving the community. Is it Hera? Hera.
Named after the Greek god. Or, ironically, and I know this is going to sound, but serendipitously, Hera is a Star Wars character.
Oh.
So when it was matched, we never had the opportunity to choose name.
Yeah.
So it all clicked into place.
I love it. One of the things that's really coming through very strongly when I speak to you is that we think that we're going to be happy pursuing goals. But I think what I'm hearing from you is that those of us who have found a way to serve are the ones that stay joyful over the long term. As a father, your levels of resilience, I feel a bit embarrassed. I teach resilience, and I feel like you should be teaching this stuff. But the resilience that
Can it be taught?
It feels like you've had things in your life that you've stepped up and just become resilient too.
This is going to sound corny, but who are you going to complain to? And you just have to get on with it. That's not a healthy approach there sometimes, because you do need to talk
Yeah,
through with people. But at the end of the day, if you keep on saying, who are you going to talk to about it? So what? There's worse off people than you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the commentary, your journey?
Just with this group of Assistance Dogs Australia, I've known them for such a long time. I've done a bit of pro bono work with them as well. They are amazing. I met the benefactors as well at the Governor General House. I had the opportunity to do that. It was great. It's those people and people who contribute, donate, that help people like me and many others, our first responders, our veterans for PTSD, and I just don't think you understand how much of a difference it makes, and it does. And I'm living proof of it. Not being paid to say this. These people are amazing, and the journey we've been on, I just wish it was obviously more available and accessible to others, because obviously we know money makes everything go around, and you need that to keep these guys functioning. So please, thank you, and also please don't stop the support, because it does change people's lives.
Fantastic. Now, on the link below, you can find out all about Assistance Dogs Australia. Volunteers, donate, whatever you like to do. It's been an amazing time. I'm really grateful to be able to bring my son to this place. Gosh, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely love it here. I'm really amazed at the impact that these guys do. And also, it's really cute seeing some really fluffy puppies today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.